know, I said it earlier, Reed was tired in the first round. That fight was just kind of a, I don't know. Listen, you should know by now when you come here, you go for broke, man. And if you don't feel like it, you're going for broke. Even, I don't know if you guys can hear the commentary, but even Bisping was like, are they serious right now? This is, you know, they'll go back and they'll watch the tape and they'll realize, you know, what they did wrong.
Yeah, no question. Gravely, it seemed like you were really impressed with him. He put on a complete performance. Talk about what you thought of him.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a guy who, which one are you talking about?
Tony Gravely, the second fight bantamweight.
So when you, two guys that are super experienced and have won titles in the smaller shows and finally get this opportunity on the big stage, and you get a guy who finishes a guy who's never been TKO'd or KO'd in 20 fights. It was an impressive fight by both guys. I love that fight.
He came in at like 18-5. I mean, it's not a prospect. You got 23 fights on your belt. What do you think when you see a guy with that record that hasn't gotten a look from you guys yet?
Yeah, you know, you got to probably look at the 5 fights. Might have been right there, and those were the fights that he didn't win to get over that hump, and tonight was his night.
I wonder, you know, he was a guy that said, man, I've been training for this since I was 7 years old. I mean, you've been around long enough now that you're starting to see guys that started out as little kids thinking they wanted to be in the UFC. You know, I mean, does that strike you as like kind of cool or something special?
Well, it's something that Lorenzo and I used to talk about. You know, the key in the early days was to get back on television, because once you get on television, that's when, you know, dads and uncles and brothers are watching the big fights, and little kids get caught up in the energy, because there's nothing like the energy of a fight, and people who are fight fans watching fights, and that's what ends up creating fighters. And the Ultimate Fighter too, I think.
Yeah. Always got to plug the Ultimate Fighter, right?
Huh?
You always got to plug the Ultimate Fighter.
I just truly believe that. I mean, if you listen to interviews with fighters, or you talk to fans that say, you know, they got into the UFC was because of the Ultimate Fighter. So many people say that.
Yeah. Sarah Alpar, I wonder what you thought of her. She was an underdog coming in, and you know, kind of a gutsy fight to pick up the win. What made you pull the trigger on her?
Yeah, I like her style. I like the way she takes risks, and when she jumped in with that left hook from downtown, and you know, just then goes in and gets the finish. You know, I think she needs to drop a weight class. I think that in the UFC, her at 135 pounds, at her, I mean, you guys have all seen Amanda Nunes and some of these girls at 35 in the UFC. They're big. This girl's gritty and tough and has a lot of heart. But you get her over at the PI, you know, and working with some professionals that'll put her on, you know. Anytime that I say to the guys that we get out of here that you can get away with that shit in these other shows, fighting up a weight class, you can't get away with that in the UFC.
When you said that, she seemed to mouth like, hey, no problem. But if for whatever reason she said, I can't make 25, I mean, would you still give her a shot?
They'll let her know if she can make it or not. But when she gets over at the PI, they teach them how to cut, and how to eat right, and how to do everything the right way. You know, for somebody like her, you know, coming from where she came from to now have full access to the UFC PI, it's a game changer.
I want to ask you about Brock Weaver. I think he was a star tonight, but how much of him getting a deal was the fight, and how much was that speech that he gave at the end, which was maybe as entertaining as the fight was?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was going to give it to him before the speech, but the speech didn't hurt. I mean, when you have guys who have that much charisma and personality, and you know, it's fun.
No doubt. And lastly, we saw the first developmental deal of the season, or at least the first that you've announced. What were your thoughts there? I mean, he's only been a pro for a year with William. Was that it? Just too green?
Yeah. I mean, you take a guy who's fought for 15 months and throw him into the light heavyweight division in the UFC. That's just fucking mean. That's just fucking mean. And yeah, we'll move him the way we've done a lot of guys, including Hardy.
Dana, speaking about William, do you feel like he should drop a weight class just because of the height difference that he has? I know it's going to be tough for him. But
they said he used to weigh 290 pounds.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that guy's massive. And the first thing, never judge a book, but the first thing I said is this guy's going to gas halfway through the first round. He's carrying way too much muscle. Wrong. I mean, this guy is a freak. Yeah. Absolute freak. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. You take a guy like this, you want to give him every opportunity that you can. he's got some talent and he's an athlete. So we'll try to move him the right way. See what happens.
Dana, I asked you about developmental deals earlier this season, and you said, we'll see what if the occasion pops up. I don't think anybody disagrees that this was a great occasion to give that out. But let me ask you, especially for light heavyweights, you mentioned hardy heavyweights, these divisions where, the top talent floats, separates itself pretty quickly. Are you going to give out maybe more of these in these higher weight classes? Should we be looking out for that?
Yeah, it depends on, if the talented guys show up, if they're there, like a guy like tonight. Yeah. And Laura asked me what took so long tonight. That's what took so long. We were talking about, whether we should or shouldn't. Because I wouldn't want to bring a guy like that in just to get slaughtered either. You know what I mean? I'd rather let him go back out and fight in the smaller shows some more. Get 10, 11 wins and see how he looks from there, and then try it again. But we all agreed that we felt we should give him the shot.
And one more just on kind of other options besides contracts. I know for the first season, maybe even the second season, if I'm correct, you were able to parlay some people moving them over for Tough if they fit that appropriately. I know that's still in the works right now, but if Tough comes back like you hinted at, can we expect that as an option for this show as a launching pad?
Definitely. We can put guys in Tough. We could have guys fighting on Looking for a Fight. Continue to, whenever we do a show, they could fight there. And it's all about the Contender Series, the Ultimate Fighter, Looking for a Fight. It's all about getting these guys exposure. What's crazy is some of you might have been at the office before, might have seen this, but in the War Room I have all the numbers laid out on the wall of what these guys have done. Like Yusuf is fighting this weekend. He did 3.5 million viewers. 3.5 million viewers on his fight in the Contender Series. Sean O'Malley, 3.5 million viewers. Hardy did 1.6 million viewers. I mean, we take these guys that nobody knows and nobody's ever seen or heard of before, tell their story, you watch them fight, and these things pull big numbers. And before they ever set foot in the UFC, 3.5 million people or whatever have seen them fight. And that's what these shows are designed to do, find and build talent.
How are you feeling about Saturday night? It's going to be the biggest card of the year?
Yeah, I'm so pumped for that card. Yeah, I'm really excited for that card. We were going through, we had a matchmaking meeting today, and you just start looking through that main card, it's fucking ridiculous. And then, how many guys are actually from the Contender Series that are in all these cards that are coming up. It's pretty impressive.
John Jones is kind of interjecting himself into fight week already. Do you think there's a possibility he takes on the winner?
What did he do?
He's jabbing at Cormier, obviously saying he doesn't think there'll be a third fight. He doesn't want to face those demons again and won't get down to 205. And just, messing with him the way he does.
Yeah. No, hey, listen. I think that, I've been asked many times about that fight. Do I think that fight needs to happen? I don't. But do I think it should? And do I think people want it? Absolutely.
Why won't they do it at heavyweight? Because that seems to be the most interesting.
John, I want that fight at heavyweight so bad. They won't do it. Not only will, as John said no, Cormier has said no. Because Cormier doesn't want to beat him at heavyweight, and I was just like, listen, if you beat him at heavyweight, you can fight him at 205. We'll probably watch that fight 10 times if you guys want to fight 10 times. So, yeah, they won't do it. And listen, when you look at, I got John Jones, who's the greatest ever. You got Cormier, also one of the greatest ever. Both been champions forever. I'm not going to fucking fight with them, man. If they want to fight at 205, I'm not going to argue with them. Yeah. Whatever. Two of the biggest kings ever in the history of the sport. That's what they want. That's what they get.
Last thing for me, I just want to ask you about Nate Diaz being back. Looking at the metrics, all the numbers, it seems like, that fight's as big of a focus as the main event is. How excited are you having back? And do you worry at all that Nate will do something weird in the last week?
No. Listen, it's funny. I did this interview the other day about Nate, and Nate's one of these guys that he has this personality where it's like he's saying "fuck you" to the man, but he never really says "fuck you" to the man. You know what I mean? Every time I'm around Nate, Nate's a good kid, and I've always had a good relationship with Nate as far as personally goes. A personal relationship with him. He's tough to deal with on the business side, but personally, he's a good guy. And whatever you want to say about the Diaz brothers, when they say they're going to fight, they sign the bout agreement, and they actually, they show up and they fight. So I don't see any problems. And you know, the Romero Costa fight is another, you know, huge fight. That, I mean, that was supposed to be a main event on another card at one point in time. So yeah, this card's awesome, man.
You think we'll get a Diaz-Conner trilogy at some point?
I don't know. I don't know. See how Saturday goes, and then see how September goes, and then see what happens with Conor.
Dave, I can't remember if you've said it, but with the Zuffa boxing coming out, is there plans to have a boxing show like the Contender Series or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, you know, like the Contender Series, but yeah, we'll end up doing something. 100%, yeah. I don't know what or how or where or anything yet, but I would bet yes.
And Super Boxing will, of course, be on ESPN Plus.
That I don't know yet either. That I don't know yet. I hope so. That would be awesome. We'll see.
There's always been fighters in the UFC that have mentioned wanting to box. Would you have some of your UFC fighters fight in their super boxing if they wanted to?
Probably not. I mean, I don't love it. Boxers are boxers and MMA fighters are MMA fighters. You know, if there was ever a special situation where it was so huge and everybody wanted to see it and everybody wanted to do it, like Conor and Mayweather, I'm not saying that I would say no, but I'd prefer everybody stay in their own lane.